This is the Ramana Maharshi satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. I'm Richard Clarke. I'm not a guru or a teacher. I love this teaching, so I just want to share it. I'm reviewing and commenting on the book Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, and this week is Talk 172. A visitor asks, what is the difference between meditation, dhyana, and investigation, Vichara? Maharshi, both amount to the same. Those unfit for investigation must practice meditation. In this practice, the aspirant, forgetting himself, meditates, I am Brahman, or I am Shiva. Thus, he continues to hold a Brahman or Shiva. This will ultimately end on the residual being as Brahman or Shiva, which he will realize to be pure being, that is, the self. He who engages in investigation starts holding on to himself, asks, who am I? And the self becomes clear to him. The visitor, will the knowledge gained by direct experience be lost afterwards? Maharshi, Kavalya Navanita says it may be lost. Experience gained without rooting out all the vasanas cannot remain steady. Efforts must be made to eradicate the vasanas, otherwise rebirth after death takes place. Some say direct experience results from hearing one's master. Others say it is from reflection. Yet others say from one-pointedness and also from samadhi. Though they look different on the surface, ultimately they mean the same. Knowledge can remain unshaken only after all the vasanas are rooted out. In Talk 172, a visitor asked Ramana Maharshi about the difference between meditation and investigation, inquiry. Maharshi sheds light on the similarities and distinctions between these two spiritual practices. Maharshi says both amount to the same. Those unfit for investigation must practice meditation. Ramana says that both meditation and self-inquiry ultimately lead to the same realization, the direct knowledge of the true self, the Atman. However, he acknowledges that some seekers may not be ready for self-inquiry and should therefore begin with meditation. To be ready for inquiry means that you have good knowledge of the teachings of non-duality, that you have desire for liberation, and an established meditation practice. Meditation, in the general sense, is a practice where you focus your mind and eliminate distractions to achieve a state of mental clarity and tranquility. Ramana did not discourage meditation. He considered it a useful tool. However, he emphasized a specific form of meditation known as self-inquiry as the best meditation to attain self-realization. Self-inquiry, or Atma Vichara, is the core of Ramana Maharshi's teachings. It is turning your attention inward to investigate the nature of the self, or I, and where it comes from. This can be described as asking the fundamental question, who am I? Then diving deep into self-investigation to understand the source of the ego and the source of the sense of I. Inquiry is staying with the question. Meditation is a focus on something, an idea, a sense experience, a body experience, etc. Inquiry is, I don't know. Meditation confirms what you know. Meditation is with the mind. Inquiry looks past the mind into consciousness/existence. It's slash because they are the same thing. In meditation, as discussed by Ramana, the meditator concentrates on one thing, on the thought, I am Brahman, or I am Shiva. By doing this, they continue to hold on to the idea of their divine nature as Brahman or Shiva. This focused meditation ultimately can lead to the realization of pure being, the true self. On the other hand, those who are ready for self-inquiry start by questioning their own identity with the classic inquiry, who am I? Ask once and stay with the investigation. This inquiry directs your attention within, leading to a clear knowledge of the self. It's a process of self-discovery. Then the questioner asks, will the knowledge gained by direct experience be lost afterwards? Whether the knowledge gained through direct experience will be lost. Ramana responds. He says, Kavalya Navanita says, it may be lost. Experience without rooting out all the vasanas cannot remain steady. Kavalya Navanita is a classic Advaita Vedanta text. It explores the non-dual philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. Kavalya Navanita translates to the cream of liberation. It's a dialogue between a teacher and a student to guide to the understanding of the nature of ultimate reality and the path of liberation, referred to as Kavalya. Ramana warns that while direct experience is valuable, self-knowledge can be forgotten if the latent tendencies, vasanas, that obscure the true self are not completely eradicated. Vasanas are desires and conditioning that cloud your perception of reality. Effort must be made to eradicate the vasanas, otherwise self-realization will not happen. Maharshi emphasizes the importance of purifying the mind and eliminating these vasanas. Failure continues the cycle of rebirth as the impurities of the mind persist even after direct experience. This is a vital teaching. As you get deeper into the practice, the focus needs to include the elimination of vasanas. I don't know if Ramana really teaches how to do this. My teacher, Nome, went through a few years of practice where the removal of tendencies was his main effort. He says that vasanas have two parts. The first is a misidentification, thinking your identity is something that it is not. And second is confusion about the source of happiness associated with the misidentification. If I think I am a body and the body likes chocolate, I think chocolate makes me happy. The way to deal with this also has two steps. First, inquire, is that really who I am? And then investigate the source of happiness. Is that where happiness truly comes from? As you discover your real identity and that the source of happiness, where happiness comes from, is from within, then the vasana weakens, then withers, then falls away. Knowledge can remain unshaken only after all the vasanas are rooted out. Ramana says that some say direct experience results from hearing your masters. Others say it's from reflection, yet others say from one-pointedness, and others from samadhi. Though they look different on the surface, ultimately they all mean the same. In all these examples, direct experience actually comes from within. And despite their external differences, they all lead to the same ultimate truth. Maharshi concludes, reiterating the importance of eliminating vasanas, emphasizing that true knowledge remains unshaken only when all impurities of the mind have been completely uprooted. So inquire, know yourself, and be always free and at peace. And now dialogue with Nome, liberation for tendencies of the mind.
Those ideas actually binding you? That you're a seeker aspiring for self-realization, that you need to practice with, say, intensity and perseverance and such. Did these ideas bind? Well, if they're not binding you, don't worry about them. What appears to bind you?
I guess the same old tendencies and the wandering of my mind.
And it's probably not a case of just the random wandering of your mind, but it tends to wander towards the same ideas, same tendencies again and again. So, being that you're a seeker who's ardent for liberation and persevering and inquiring, etc., all those ideas you mentioned before, since you can claim those as your identity for the time being, you're well endowed to address the tendencies. You address them through deep inquiry and get to their very root. If you weren't seeking liberation from the imagined bondage, there'd be no point to addressing the tendencies. You would equate them with life. But you can't do that anymore, can you? A tendency remains for you only so long as you believe it. Your belief, your emphasis, gives it its solidity and its repetitive occurrence. So examine your mind. Observe the tendencies that appear in it, the vasanas, and determine what definitions of yourself are at the root of that. Perceiving those definitions, then inquire to determine whether those are true definitions or merely delusion. If you can see delusion as delusion, with any tendency, it's over. It is only so long as you take some bit of delusion as if it were, you mistake it to be real knowledge, that it's saying something about you, about what is true, that it seems to survive. Be certain that when you examine a tendency, you actually examine the tendency and not something that is superfluous or even helpful. For example, I have never seen anyone hurt by having the sense about themselves that they're an intense yogi striving for liberation. I haven't seen any examples of anyone bound by that. That they're limited, body-identified individuals caught up in their own personal desires and fears. That I've seen some difficulties with. So which one do you think you should address? Which continuity are you missing? Whether active or inactive with the body, you carry with you the definition, the sense of identity. At the very core of that is the continuous sense of existence. That's all right. What you add to that existence, be very careful about. If inquiry becomes for you not just the seated posture in meditation, and not just a stream of thought, but comes as the deep, ongoing wondering about your real nature, that is, it consists of knowledge, it will be continuous. You carry with you, regardless of circumstances, your sense of identity. What is your sense of identity? What makes it up? You can be discerning that all the time. With a practice at this depth, activities of the body, circumstances it's in, etc., don't mean anything. They represent no change. If the mind is pursuing some object of desire, find out, why do you desire it? The why will always be rooted, the reason will always be rooted in what you regard as yourself. Find out if what you regard as yourself is the same thing as your actual existence. If it's an add-on, then subtract off. The tendencies are self-generated. They're not caused by other things. So you are free to be free of them. The tendencies do not maintain themselves. They have neither existence nor power of their own. Your belief makes them appear and sustains them. Now, if you would trace the belief to its origin, that is back to yourself, the tendencies would vanish. That is traced back from what you think you are to what you truly are. Is this clear for you? Okay.
All right, and now we have a chance to look into this ourselves. Notice that you exist, and you know that you exist. You don't have to feel it with your senses or think it with your mind. You just know immediately and directly. And knowing that you exist, inquire, investigate. Am I fit for self-inquiry? Or should I start with meditation as suggested by Ramana? To be ready for inquiry, you have to know about non-duality. You have to have some desire for liberation, and you have to have a practice. When I meditate, can I truly immerse myself in the thought, I am Brahman, or I am Shiva? How does it make me feel? Do I understand vasanas and how they can cloud my direct experiences? What vasanas or desires might be hindering my spiritual progress, and how can I work to eliminate them? Who am I? What is the nature of my existence? All right. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Now, I was glad to find that Nome talk on vasanas.
Yes, that was a good one. Hmm.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. While he was speaking, there was a racket in the road, and I think I missed or I didn't quite get. But did he say something to the effect that if that tendency really isn't affecting you, and if you're not burdened by it, something like that, then
Well,
you're
he was saying the tendency, like to want to get meditate and to get realized, is not a burden.
okay.
So there are
Yeah.
tendencies that help you go the way you want to go, and those are okay.
Oh, I'm really glad I asked that question because I had trucks rolling and dogs barking through when he said that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And for Ramana, with the stuff that I read, this was the one that he did the most talking about vasanas and tendencies.
yeah,
And it still surprises me that it is not more known as an essential part of practice. We just think we're supposed to inquire, and after a while, we get free.
yeah. I I think that's where meditation is helpful because that's when you're taught that as thoughts come and go. Well, really,
Mhm.
vasanas are just thoughts,
Right.
so they can come and go.
But the vasanas, the point of the vasanas is they're repeating thoughts.
Right,
And
right.
so they repeat based on a pattern, and the pattern is still who you think you are and what
Yeah,
makes that imagined entity happy.
yeah. And some of our upbringing, which
Absolutely.
that which if you've been bad or naughty, then you really supposed to think about that and chastise yourself
Mm-hmm.
until you promise you're not going to do that again. And then
Uh-huh.
it's so ingrained. You don't
Uh-huh.
just let it come and go.
And at
You have to
another
grab it.
at another level, the food we eat, the stuff that we learn is good food to eat when we're
Yeah,
a child still makes us happy many years later. And for some people, it's very difficult to change their diet because of that.
yeah. And then they scold themselves
Yes,
because they haven't changed. And that just compounds the problem.
right. Yes, yes. Yeah, one thing I feel personally very fortunate about is for some reason, maybe it was the way my mother raised me, but I don't scold myself much.
Yeah. Well, you didn't go to Episcopal boarding school.
Well, that's what they teach you, huh?
Oh, yes.
Well, as
Well,
a
you've
woman,
done marvelously well to break out of some of that conditioning.
Oh, definitely.
That's a woman problem as well. I mean, women
Yes,
are
it
always
is.
having
Yeah.
to get better.
Yeah. And if you've brushed past any Catholicism, you're gonna get another layer of that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And the point of these tendencies is they all confine us to the identity that we're holding when we
Mhm.
are running that tendency. So
Yeah.
the problem is not the tendency, the problem is the limits we're holding to in order to make that tendency come true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank goodness we've been shown up the door, the
Uh-huh.
way out.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many that are just imagined. You know, the expression is bound without a rope.
Uh-huh. That's true. Yeah. You think
Okay.
of the, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just making noise.
I was just thinking, you think of the people that are really bound by self-hatred, and yet they're getting something out of that.
Right, it makes them
So they wouldn't
happy
be doing it.
somehow. That's right.
Control, I think. They somehow feel they've got control of that.
Maybe that's it.
And there's a lot of that going around. I mean,
Yes, amen.
mhm.
I guess we should say Om.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for joining me today. I felt like this was an important session,
Yeah, it was.
and I'm glad to share it.
Yes. Thank
And
you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
namaste, and we'll see you next
Namaste.
time. These videos help bring Ramana Maharshi's teachings into your direct experience. Subscribe now